Hello my beautiful friends and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. My name is Tara. Today I am just getting ready. I'm just going to do my makeup and I'm going to tell you some ghost stories. Some personal ghost stories. Whether you believe in ghosts or you don't believe in ghosts, or you believe in the paranormal or you don't believe in the paranormal, that's fine, but everybody loves a good ghost story. So I have some really cool personal ghost stories that I would love to share, and I chose to do it today while we get ready. So if you would like to hear my personal ghost stories whilst I put my makeup on, keep on watching. So I'm just going to quickly really pop some primer on, and where shall we start? My mother used to see ghosts. Now, she never told us while we were children that she used to see ghosts. It wasn't until we got older that she told us about the ghosts that she used to see, or that she sees. And to this day, she still believes that she sees ghosts. They follow her wherever she goes. So every house she's ever lived in has been haunted. But she believes that she's haunted, not, it's a long story, and bottom line is my mum always had the ability to either see them or just communicate with them, like a sixth sense sort of thing. And as a kid, I wasn't aware of this, but my memories of being a child, when I think about the paranormal and seeing ghosts and whatnot, I was absolutely terrified. And even through my early teens and early 20s, I was absolutely terrified of ever seeing a ghost. I was so scared that I honestly believed that I would have a heart attack and die. That's how scared I was. I was terrified of the dark, and I had to sleep with a lamp on next to my bed right up until, I'd say, probably only a year or two ago. I still slept with the lamp on with like a scarf or something over it to dim it down, but I always had to have a light on because I was terrified of the dark, 100%. And even in my early 20s, I still remember being scared of there could be something under the bed, so I was terrified. Like, it was an irrational fear, and I really could never work out why I was so scared. Possibly the fact that my mother, as I got older, started to tell me about her experiences. But I remember being just as scared when I was a kid, but I do not remember actually having any of my own experiences as a child. But we all know that our brains are a very mysterious thing, and I well could have suppressed memories. I don't know. But for me to have an absolutely irrational fear of ghosts, maybe I did experience something or things as a child that I just can't remember experiencing. And that could possibly explain why I've been terrified, like even as an adult, to see a ghost or experience something paranormal. In my younger 20s in particular, I do remember a couple of occasions where I experienced a couple of things that could possibly be chalked down to something paranormal. Like, there's been lots of things happen that I could explain away, or find something to explain it away to stop myself from being so scared. Things like, and this one thing happened when I was with a group of people actually in my lounge room when I would have been about 21, and we're all sitting watching TV. I had a stereo CD player right next to the TV, and it was off. It was turned off. Like, it was on the PowerPoint, but it was turned off. And we're all sitting there just watching TV one night. There was probably, I reckon, 4 of us, all sitting there watching, just sitting on the couch, just relaxed, just all watching TV, and suddenly the stereo next to the TV turned on. We sat there and watched the volume on the stereo turn up to full volume, and it had a turn dial. The volume, we didn't actually see the dial turn, but the volume on the stereo went from 0 all the way up to 50, and I had to get up and switch it off. That was pretty scary. We all freaked out, and nobody wanted to stay the night. I think from memory, I can't remember exactly who. I'm pretty sure that somebody did stay with me that night because I was pretty scared. And then in that same house, on a separate occasion, I had people over again. You know, I was only 21, always had friends over, and we're all sitting around, and this time we were sitting at the dining table, and at the time, my boy, my oldest son, was only 1 or 2, and he had a remote control truck, like a monster truck toy that has a remote control, like a wireless remote control. The remote control was in his room. I remember that because we went looking for it. But we're all sitting there, and this toy truck was sitting on the floor in the lounge room, because my dining room and lounge room were attached. It was sitting at the table, and this truck on the floor, and my son wasn't there at the time. I think he was at his grandmother's or something, and we're all sitting there chatting away, and then this truck, which was probably 4 meters away from us, just sitting on the lounge room floor on the carpet, it just went on the floor, like it moved forward and back, like maybe 2 centimeters forward and 2 centimeters back, and we all shat our pants. One of the people at the table, I don't remember who it was, sat there and said, "Go on, do it again," and the truck went on the floor, and we shat, and we actually got up and ran out the house. Now, that back then, I was still terrified, like heart attack scared of anything like that happening. And soon after that happened, I actually moved out. That was, for a few years, the scariest experience I'd had, other than the stories that my mother had told me. Like, those stories that she had told me, they haunted me. One story, when I was little, in a house we lived in, her bedroom was directly opposite mine and my sister's bedroom, so our doors met, like face to face down a hallway, and where she slept, she could see through her door. When she was on her bed, she could see through her door into our door, and she could see us in our beds. And she has told me, like, years and years and years later, I would have only been maybe 8 or 10, something like that, and she told me that she woke up one night and just rolled over and looked through her door into our door, and there was a figure, she believes it was a man, with dressed all in black, like a big trench coat and a black hat, standing in our bedroom door, just standing in the door frame, and just standing there looking at me and my sister asleep in bed. And she yelled out, "Oi," or "Hey," or something, and the guy turned around and walked down the hallway, and she jumped up, and there was nobody there. So that was a pretty scary one. She said that freaked her out because he was standing in our bedroom door looking at me and my sister sleeping. And another one that she experienced was a little boy with no eyes. Like, this shit's scary. Like, just being told these things have haunted me. I can't imagine how my mother copes with these things, but I don't know if it's true even, or if these are all figments of her imagination, or if she dreamt them or whatever. But the little boy with no eyes was a recurring one that would come back all the time, and it would come and it would tap her while she was asleep in her bed, and tap her on the side or whatever to wake her up. She said the first time she rolled over and she thought that it was one of my brothers waking her up, and the little boy said to her, "I can't see, I don't know where to go." And when she rolled over and looked, and the little boy had no eyes, and she said that was terrifying. And he came back a few times. So, like, these stories that my mum told me as I got older, gave me nightmares as an adult, as a young adult. And again, the irrational fear of ever experiencing something like that myself, or seeing a ghost or coming into contact with something like that, really, really terrified me, to the point where I couldn't sleep in the dark. Like, I was terrified. It drove my husband nuts because I had to have lights on. I had to have a lamp on. So he'd have no choice but to sleep in the room with a lamp on next to the bed. But I had no choice. I couldn't do it. I couldn't sleep. I remember one night we had a blackout, like we lost power, and that meant there was no lights on no street lights or anything, so it was pitch black. And I woke up during this blackout, and when I opened my eyes, I couldn't see anything. Like, it was pitch black. And I freaked out waking up. I was screaming. My husband woke up in a panic, what's wrong? And I remember saying to him, I'm blind, I can't see, it's dark, I can't see. And he's like, no, it's a blackout, it's fine. You can't see because it's a blackout. And then eventually my eyes adjusted and I could sort of see. But waking up in the pitch black was terrifying to me. I couldn't sleep in the summertime without something over me. I always had to have a sheet or something over me, out of fear of something touching me, and I couldn't sleep with a limb hanging over the side of the bed because I was scared something under the bed was going to reach out and grab me by my foot or my leg or my arm, whatever was hanging over the bed. So I never hung any limbs over the bed or had any part of my body outside the sheet. You know how when you're really hot, you'll stick a foot out from under your blanket. I wouldn't do that because I was scared that something was going to touch me on the foot. It was just, irrational fear, but the things that I'd been told throughout my teenage years and my young adult years was enough to scare the living daylights out of me. Anyway, as I got older, the irrational fear never eased up. I hated being home by myself. I was terrified. If I was home by myself, I'd go and check every single cupboard, every single bedroom, under every single bed, behind every single door, any space that was big enough for somebody or something to hide in, I would check. And once I'd checked it all, I would make sure that if I was sitting in the lounge room watching TV, I'd sit in the part of the lounge room where I could see everything and nothing could creep up behind me. It was just silly. And if I was home by myself, I'd have to leave the TV on when I went to bed, plus the lamp next to my bed, so that there was some white noise, because I was scared of hearing noises and hearing footsteps, and it was crazy. It was just really silly. A lot of that has changed for me now. My bloody scarf keeps slipping off. I've got it pinned down. Why does it keep moving? So a lot of that has changed. I'm not as scared anymore because I have had a few of my own real experiences. Well, they were real for me in the last couple of years. So one of my girlfriends came to me and said, let's go on a weekend trip away, and let's go down to a place called Arradale, to the insane asylum, which had closed down it had closed in the 80s, but had been open for 150 years or something, and it was originally an insane asylum back in the late 1800s, when a woman who had PMS was considered insane, back then. So this place had been built back then and had been used for a few different things over the years, but then eventually it was deemed condemned and they closed it down. And then a ghost tour group lobbied to have access to the buildings to run ghost tours, because it's considered one of Australia's most haunted places. This is Arradale Insane Asylum, or Arradale Lunatic Asylum. Look it up. You'll see some pictures, and Google it, and even watch some videos on YouTube. The place is terrifying. Anyway, she said, let's go down and do one of these ghost tours. And at first I was like, hell no. I am not stepping foot inside a place that could possibly have my biggest fear, my absolute biggest fear. I'm not walking into a place where something's going to happen that will induce a heart attack and kill me. No, thank you. She ended up convincing me to do it. So we went down to Arradale and we organised some accommodation for the night, and we went down there. And so the tour started at 7 p.m. and it went until 1 a.m. So when we got there, they said to arrive 15 minutes early. So we got there at 6:45. It was already dark. Now, this place, we hadn't been there. We didn't have any idea what we were driving into. But when we drove in, it was a long driveway with no lights, a long dirt driveway. And it just went on and on and on. And on each side of the driveway were big trees. So it was dark and scary and gloomy, and exactly how you'd imagine driving up to somewhere like this, like in a horror movie. Like, that's what it was like, and the only lights were from the car headlights. We're driving up towards the building, and when we got to the building, like the main building, like this place has like 100 buildings on 150 acres. It's massive. But when we drove up to the main building, there was no lights whatsoever except one light above the main door of the main building. And so that was also eerie, like really eerie. And we pulled up there and there was nobody there. We didn't know what to do. So we went for another drive around, couldn't find anybody. We went back to the main place where we pulled up first, and I rang the tour company, and she said, oh, they're there, like, just wait there and he'll come out soon. So we're sitting there, and then the tour guide ends up coming through that door with the main light on. He welcomed us, and we're standing there waiting, and for a little while we're like, are we the only two people coming to this? Like, I was expecting a massive big group of people to be on this ghost hunting tour, and we were the only two people there. And so we're standing there for a little while, and about 5 minutes later, another couple turned up, a guy and a girl turned up, and that was it. So there was 4 of us on this ghost tour. It was actually a ghost hunting tour, so we had all the kit and caboodle. We had all the ghost hunting equipment. So if you've ever seen any of those ghost hunting shows on TV or on YouTube, and they have all that ghost hunting equipment, that's what we had. We had like the little EMS bloody electric things that flash red whenever it detects anything. We had all the big speaker thing that sort of picks up sound you can't hear with your own ears. We had all these lights that would come on if it detected anything. Like, we had the whole lot. Once I realised that we were working with all of this ghost hunting equipment, like, my fear went into overdrive. I was terrified. I didn't really want to even be there, but I was there, so I wasn't gonna, go and wait outside while it finished, like while the tour ran by myself, because it went for 6 hours. I wasn't gonna wait out in the car by myself. Like, outside was just as scary. And the place looked exactly like you'd imagine it would look. It was scary just walking inside. Anyway, so we were on this tour, and we did a couple of different things. We started in the chapel, and the tour guide set up some lights down the centre of the chapel and got us to all stand there with our little machines with the red lights, and he was asking the spirits to come forward and interact with us, and we're all standing there in the pitch black, mind you, in this chapel. I was nearly peeing myself. I was so scared. And then guess whose light turned on first on the little machine? Yeah, mine. The light went red on mine. And he's like, oh, there's something right near you, and it must be within a metre of you because your little EMS or EMR reader is picking it up, and they usually only have a range of about a metre. And I was like, this? Like, no, thank you. And I got him to turn the light on. I was so scared. So scared. And then he's like, it's okay. Like, they can't hurt you. Like, they physically can't touch you. After that, a couple of the other, like the other 3 people on the tour, their lights all started going off and everything. And then I started to sort of calm down a little bit and sort of was telling myself, rationalizing it all in my head, telling myself that it has to be, this must be a gimmick. Like, people pay to do these things to get the wits scared out of them, but surely this is bullshit, surely. So that's what I kept telling myself so that I could keep going, because this was only half an hour into the tour and there was still like 5 hours to go. So I made sure that I kept telling myself this and kept telling myself this, and throughout the tour lots of different things happened. We were taken down to one building which was the residence for all the nurses that lived on site, and it had 3 floors of accommodation. And when he took us into this big building, in one room on the middle floor, he had all these screens set up. So there was cameras set up all over the building, and then there was one central room that had all the screens where he could stand and watch. So he said, well, I'm going to stay here and watch on the camera, and you guys can go off and do your own investigating. Take all the ghost hunting equipment, and 2 of you go upstairs, 2 of you go downstairs, and see if you can find anything. So off we went, and we went interacting, and we were asking questions like, is anybody there? And then the little thingy red light would flash, and we'd say, flash once for yes, flash twice for no. And we're asking random questions, and and the lights were flashing, and you'd get a one flash and then you'd get a two flashes, and oh yeah, we were interacting with ghosts, but the whole time I was telling myself, nah, this is bullshit. It's bullshit. Like, these little EMS readers are just picking up electric currents in the air, like radio waves or whatever. Like, I'm going to play along, and I'm going to think, and I'm going to, ask the ghosts all the questions, and ask who they are, and ask if they're stuck here, and ask if they worked here, or if they were patients here, and all that sort of thing. But in the back of my mind, I'm telling myself, they're just picking up electrical currents. Like, it's really nothing. So that's how I managed to get through the first 3 hours of the tour, because I was telling myself it was all crap, but I was just playing along. So that was all well and good, and I was doing okay. Like, I was still scared about walking into these different buildings and these different rooms, but I was coping okay. And then we went into a room which was like a building which was back in the original use of the buildings, like the insane asylum. It was the men's wing. And in one particular room, in where they kept all the men, was a room that the tour guide told us is where they performed all the lobotomies. So if you know what a lobotomy is, they go up in through the nose, or they make an incision in the head and they go in and they remove a piece of the brain. Back then it was a form of treatment for things like schizophrenia and like mental problems, mental issues that people had, or if they considered somebody crazy or whatever, they'd perform a lobotomy and it would just basically turn them into a slobbering mess. And in this room is where I had my first real experience. So we were just wandering around, we're looking at all the marks on the floor that the tour guide's telling us that was where the beds were, and like when the lobotomies were being performed, the beds would shake and they eventually left marks in the concrete floor, and then he pulls out these tools that were used for lobotomies. And he's like, here, let's see if we can stir up some activity. And he starts banging these medical tools together, making all these loud banging noises. And then all of a sudden, all of their lights started going off their brains, like flashing crazy. And we're asking all these questions to our little machines and talking and communicating with all the ghosts. And then I was standing at one end of the room, and I was actually standing with the guy from the other couple, was standing at the other end of the room with his wife. And we're both, both of us were separate with this other couple, and we're doing our thing with our machines, and we're standing there and we're asking questions, and our little lights are flashing, and then all of a sudden I look up, and over on one wall of the building, of this room, was just all windows, and we were about 3 stories up, so very, very high off the ground, and it was pitch black outside too, out the windows, because it was like 9, 10 o'clock at night, and this place is in the middle of nowhere, so it was quite dark. And all of a sudden I can see like all of this it sort of looked like smoke, but then it also looked like water, like you'd see rushing down a waterfall, but it was going horizontally, and it was going across all the windows. And I was standing there gobsmacked, watching it get more and more and more intense and fast. And it was like really bright, and kind of like smoke or water just flushing past these windows. And I turned to the guy that was there and I said, "Did you see that?" And he goes, "Yeah, did you see that?" And I said, "Yeah, did you see, was it like smoke or water or something, but going across the windows, like really fast, like run past the windows?" And he said, "Yeah, that's exactly what I see." And he goes, I didn't know what it was. Like, and we're both standing there stunned. We called over the tour guide and we told the tour guide what we've seen. And he's like, "Oh my God, you guys have had a visual experience." He said, quite often people have, like, they'll hear things, or a lot of people think that they're being touched, like on the back of the head or on their shoulder, whatever. He said, but very, very rarely do we ever have anybody who has a visual experience. He said, because visual experiences are like obviously more powerful, more like they're stronger. You can't explain away or rationalize something that you see. He said, so it's very, very unusual that you guys seen it. And he said, come with me. So we went into another room where he had some equipment in his bags, and he got out his laptop and he got us to sit down with him and he got us to document exactly what we've seen. So he put it all in his little computer, that like all the details of what we've seen, and everybody was, gasping over what we'd just experienced. And then we decided to move on. So we left that building and we moved on. And at that point, after experiencing that, I still to this day cannot explain what I seen. Like, explaining it like I seen like smoke or water or something rushing past windows doesn't even really explain exactly what I seen. Like, what I seen, I can't really explain with words, because I believe what I seen wasn't anything that has words to explain. So that was so scary, and it didn't have a good vibe about it either. So you most people are intuitive to some point, and you can pick up vibes, and that didn't have a good vibe about it. And after that, I was done. I just didn't want to be there anymore. I was over it. I was like, nah, this, to me, it felt like whatever that was like, did it so that we would leave. Like, gonna scare you so you get out because you're not welcome here. Like, there'd been some really terrible things happen in that room. That's how it felt. Like, it felt really negative and not very nice. So I just didn't want to be there anymore. But we still had like 2 hours to go on the tour, and I wasn't going to go out and wait in the car. No way. Not in the middle of that place, in the dark, not even in the car park. Hell no. So I had to stay with the tour, but it dragged on. The last 2 hours really dragged on. I did not enjoy it at all. We went into the women's wing where like they housed pregnant women, and women would have their babies there, and that place felt the worst. Like, it was like the pain and the suffering experience there, it was embedded in the walls of the building. Like, it felt so horrible. And I also felt like we weren't welcome in there either. So from that point on, I just didn't enjoy it whatsoever. Nothing else really happened. My girlfriend said she felt like she got touched on the head by something, and that was in the criminally insane wing. But other than that, that was about it. And then the tour ended and we left and we went back to our motel room. And even though I just had the wits scared out of me, I still managed to have a good night's sleep. Like, I had no trouble getting to sleep or whatever. And we just went back to the motel room, and we were exhausted because it was like 1 a.m. or 1:30 by the time we got back to the motel room, and I was buggered, so we just went to bed. And then the next day we got up and we travelled on to Ballarat, where they have a place called Sovereign Hill. Sovereign Hill it's like a theme park, but based on the gold rush of the 1800s. So it's like a replica town of the times during the Ballarat gold rush. So you're able to go like gold panning there and find your own bits of gold, and they have like night shows and like a fully functioning little town with buildings that are replicas of what they would have had back then. A really cool place, like really fun, really cool place. And they have a really cool dinner and like a night show with dinner and everything, and you get to go and have a meal in the restaurant, which is actually one of the buildings within the replica town, and then go on and watch the light show, like the light and sound show. And so that was really fun. But the night that we went to Sovereign Hill, we actually decided to stay in Sovereign Hill for the night. Within the grounds of Sovereign Hill, the accommodation has actually been renovated from the original houses that were there on the actual hill of the property back in the 1800s during the gold rush. So these old houses had been like renovated and turned into accommodation for people that wished to stay within the theme park. So we chose to do that, and we're staying in this really, really, really old farmhouse. Been turned into some really beautiful accommodation. We spent the night there, and we had to share a bed, like a king-size bed. She slept on the side of the bed closest to the door. I slept on the side of the bed closest to the window. And about halfway through the night, I was woken up by, when I opened my eyes, there was a lady I swear I believe this happened. There was a lady standing beside the bed looking down at me smiling. She was dressed in, like, it looked like she'd come from that era, the 1800s. So she had a big dress, like a skirt on with the white apron, and she had like short black hair in a bob. And she was standing there between the bed and the window looking down at me smiling. I was frozen with fear. I couldn't get any voice out of me. Like, I'm opening my mouth. I was trying to scream out to wake up my friend who was asleep next to me, but I was frozen with fear. All I could do, like, nothing would come out of my mouth. So all I could do, like, I could only move my arm beside her, and I was trying to, like, bash her, like I'm laying there like this, like, freaking out, like I can't even look away. Like, all I could do is move my arm, and I'm trying to bang her to wake her up, and she wouldn't wake up. And then that was it. Like, I fell back asleep. And so I don't know if it was a dream or if it really happened. But the next day, my girlfriend, I was telling her what happened, and she said, yeah, you were scratching at the headboard. So the bed that we slept in had a headboard, and she said that I was like scratching like that. And I'm like, yeah, that was me trying to wake you up. So I actually did do that. Like, I was really like this. And she said, yeah, you were scratching at the headboard. And she said, I just ignored you. Like, I thought you were dreaming or whatever. She said, I didn't roll over and look. So she didn't roll over and look and see what I was doing. So she didn't see it. But she acknowledged the fact that I was actually scratching the headboard. So I don't know if that's validation of what happened or if I was dreaming it and I did that in my sleep. I don't know. But all I can tell you is it scared the absolute shit out of me. And that's basically what happened. And then, yeah, the next day we got up and drove home. So a couple of weeks after that, when I got home, I was sitting in my lounge room on the lounge in the dark, watching TV, and I could never actually sit in the full dark. So the kitchen light was still on, but the lounge room was all darkened, and I have a hallway that runs off my lounge room. I was just sitting there watching TV, and I can't remember where everybody else was, but I know that I was sitting there by myself. And out the corner of my eye, I seen something move in the hallway. And just as I looked over towards the hallway, I seen the back end of a little pair of legs, like from the calf down, and I could see the bottom of a dress that cut off at the calf. So, like, yeah, I seen the bottom of the dress, and I seen two child's legs, bare legs with bare feet, walking out of, like, down the hallway, past the door. So all I seen in that split second was just the legs and the bottom of the dress. Like, somebody was walking past, and as they stepped past the opening into the lounge room, like, you see the back end of that last step before they disappear past the wall. I seen that, and for some reason, like, for the first time in my entire life, I wasn't scared. Like, I got up to have a look, and all my kids were in bed. It couldn't have been any of my children. I think my husband was even in bed, and I've got 4 boys. I don't have any girls, so there was no girls in the house, and I certainly don't own any little girls' dresses. So I still to this day can't explain that. I do believe that something may have followed me back from either Sovereign Hill or the other place, but I haven't seen anything since then. So whether they followed me back and then they moved on, or I imagined it, I don't know. But I've seen that and it didn't scare me. And ever since then, I haven't been as scared since that experience. So I'm grateful for the experience because I think it cured my irrational fear. Like, I've experienced all of these things in my life and not once have I ever been hurt. So I'm at the point now where I convince myself that if something happens, I'm not going to get hurt. So there's really no point being scared. I know of other people that have had experiences as well and have also said the same thing. Like, if you ever do have an experience, whether you believe or you don't believe, like, that's your prerogative. But if you've ever been terrified and then you have an experience and you realise that it's not going to hurt you, it is a good way to cure your fear of seeing a ghost, because it definitely cured my fear. and I'm grateful for that. I would love to go back to Arrowdale one day and do the historical tour that runs during the day, not in the middle of the night until 1 o'clock in the morning. I would really love to go back for that one day because the place is steeped in history. Like, the things that happened there, there's some really sad stories. They used to send kids with Down syndrome there because there was nowhere else to send them, and they were considered retarded back then. If a child had Down syndrome or had like a any sign of autism or anything back then, they were considered a retard, and they were sent to insane asylums. And again, the women would be diagnosed with hysteria, which is PMS, and they would be sent to the insane asylum to be cured of their hysteria. Like, that's awful, but it's part of the history of the place, and I would just love to one day go back and do the historical tour because I do love history and all that sort of thing. So one day I'll go back, but I don't know if I'll go back for the ghost tour because the experience that I had, the camera went flat. So I went off camera and I just quickly finished I just had to put mascara and eyeliner on, so I did that. And I'll quickly do some lipstick. But yeah, as I was saying, so while the tour and the experiences that I had at Sovereign Hill cured my irrational fear and thought that I was going to have a heart attack if I did experience anything like visually, I still wouldn't go back and do a tour again because it just had a really horrible vibe about it. Like, we shouldn't have been there, and we shouldn't be capitalizing and making an entertainment out of people's suffering and misery, which is exactly what happened in that place. But I'm glad I did go because it was an experience I'll never forget, and now I can sleep with the lights off. I find that I still consider myself scared of the dark if I'm alone, but I can sleep with the lamp off next to me now, and I don't have to have like the bathroom light on, and I don't have to have the TV on. So that's something positive out of that. But I also came out of it with some pretty cool ghost stories, if you ask me. So that's it. My face is done. I'm going to give her one more spray. I'm off tonight to go and watch my oldest son grade for karate. He's grading for his black belt. We're all so excited for that. He'll be 15 in 2 weeks. He's been doing karate for about 4 years, and he's grading for his black belt in mixed martial arts. So that is a massive achievement for my boy, and we're so excited to go see him do that tonight. He has to fight 15 men, one after the other. That's part of grading for your black belt. You have to fight 15 men, one after the other. So it's going to be a big challenge for him, but I'm sure he'll be just fine. Yeah. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up for a start, and if you're not subscribed, definitely subscribe. I'll pop a thing here. You just press it and away you go to subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any of your own ghost stories, because I would love to hear them. And if you would like to hear more stories like this, more Get Ready With Me's, then I can tell you some other things that I think are pretty cool that you would like to hear, then definitely let me know. I've got lots of different things that I could talk about. But let me know if you want to hear any more cool stories, not necessarily ghost stories, but just experiences that I've had in my life. I've got some pretty cool ones. Let me know and I will get to it. So yeah, thank you for watching. Make sure you go do something kind for someone, because just one act of kindness can make somebody feel 1,000,000 times better, and it'll make you feel better. I promise. Bye guys.